Dear Queenagers, so here I am back home after the Camino, which has been a really kind of big thing to write about, and it's a kind of big honour to have done it. It's a real bucket list trip. And here I am, I've got my Camino. Everyone who walks the Camino has a scallop shell on the back. You hang it from your bag. And you also have one of these, which is a Camino passport, and you get stamps in it, so which I'm going to talk about in the newsletter, so you'll find out a bit about that. So this is the Eleanor Mills Queenager newsletter, and this is all about the Camino, and it really is a massive honour to write about that this week, and all about the Queenager Camino that we just came back from. So we went on a big trip, noon trip, taking the Portuguese coastal route, and I have to say it was pretty epic in every single way, not least in terms of what it has done to my feet. My left little toe is black and weeping with the nail hanging off. I'll spare you a close-up of that. And I've only been able to wear Birkenstocks with socks. Not my favourite look since our return, but I reckon 110 kilometres in 5 days was maybe a bit much. It's one thing to walk 24 kilometres in a day, another to then get up and do it all over again and again and again and again. I've never walked so consistently far, I don't think, in my whole life. So how to sum up our journey? Well, I wasn't sure what to expect from the Camino de Santiago. I knew it was a thing, a network of pilgrims' ways leading to the shrine of the Apostle James at the cathedral in Santiago de Compostela in northern Spain, and that it has been trodden as a spiritual quest since the 9th century. Also, that of all the noon trips and jaunts that we've run, it's sold out the quickest. It's one of those life bucket list trips. But I hadn't bargained for quite how big a deal it was. It really is not just a walk, it's a pilgrimage. And let's not forget the grim in the middle of that word pilgrimage. We all suffered a bit. But as the Buddha says, life is suffering. And the biggest lesson from the walk for me was that even when each step was agony, my toenail developed a blood blister and was coming off for quite a lot of it. It was possible to both be aware of the pain, and feeling that your foot was sore, but simultaneously to be relishing the beauty of the Atlantic waves crashing on the beach next to the path, or the canna lilies, there's arum lilies growing wild, or lichen on ancient pines, or a bawdy joke, or wonderful purple fynbos. And it taught me that we can hold the light and the dark together, and that the light, the beauty of dew on leaves, the yellow of the flowers against the intense green, the loving touch of a fellow Queenager, was made even brighter perhaps by the pinch of the toes, the rubbing of boot against foot, the kind of darkness which is always with us. They say that by walking a long way, we walk back to ourselves, and I really have found that to be true. But what is also true is how the walk brought us all together as a group, bonded us as a group of not just noon ladies, but pilgrims. I couldn't have done it alone. It would have felt too hard. But with the support of our Queenager crew, all became possible. When my foot hurt so much that I had to walk backwards down a long hill, the downward incline pinched the toe mercilessly, you can imagine, and tears were in my eyes from the pain. My friends, my Queenager friends, came forward with pink Nurophens and Compeed plasters and chocolate and thicker socks and cheered me up. And almost miraculously, 20 minutes later, I was laughing and stomping along again, cracking jokes, looking around. I made it another 14 kilometres to Calais de Reis, our home for the night that evening. And all along the trail, others too are enduring and conquering their weaknesses, aided on and abetted by their companions. It's got to be said that sometimes the Camino looks a bit like a battlefield. There are so many people sitting by the side of the path applying plasters to feet, resting or taking medication. It's a bit like the marathon or something. Everyone carries a pilgrim passport, this that I just showed you, which is stamped in churches or cafes or by vendors along the way. And you get little stamps, some kind of prettier than others. And at the cathedral, if you have enough stamps, it shows exactly where you've walked, and you get a certificate saying that you've completed the path. And it's a kind of big deal. This is a really international thing, the Camino. The whole world is here on the path. Not just hot South American priests, but a family walking along with 4 kids under 5, all their possessions in 2 squishy bags in the double buggy. They were going quite slowly, but the kids were having a nice time. There were 18 Queenagers like us. There were older couples, groups of teenagers walking for school, a whole group of chaps walking for charity, for a Catholic charity. everyone somehow on both a personal and a public odyssey, and the struggles and joys witnessed by all the other pilgrims on the walk. It was a great leveller. We were lucky we weren't carrying our stuff. It was being transported for us between hotels. And I must say I was very glad not to be struggling under a heavy backpack, although we did have to have all our stuff ready to be taken away at 8 a.m. Traditionally, people got kind of so full of lice and stinky over the journey that the clothes of the pilgrims were burnt on the roof of the cathedral when they got there. And the sweaty pong of all those travellers is, I think, why they have so much incense in the church. It's interesting because although the Camino is incredibly famous, it's not always beautiful. Some of us, me included, were slightly kind of concerned by the fact that it wasn't always kind of going through like areas of outstanding national beauty. It's much less beautiful, for instance, than walking the kind of southwest coastal path where I was at Easter. But if you think about it, that's not really surprising. It's been going for over 1,000 years, and those roads that the pilgrims took were the most direct routes between one place and another. So, of course, some of it now has become motorways and there are factories there. Some bits of Galicia are quite industrialised. And the ancient and the modern collide, a 12th century bridge near a high-speed rail line. Or I saw two kingfishers, you know how I love a kingfisher, zoom along a man-made river below a dual carriageway. Our walk took us through ancient forests and beside rivers, but also by roads and industrial estates and pollution. And I suppose that makes sense. This is not a trail frozen in aspect through an area of outstanding national beauty, but a walk through the living body of Spain and Portugal, taking in churches, which are inevitably in towns. You know, if you're just after a beautiful long walk, stick with the Southwest Coast Path or the Highlands. The Camino is a part of life, integral to it, not apart from it. We walked past allotments and tenements, holiday homes and hotels. Some bits of the northern part of Portugal felt a bit like Skegness off-season, damp and deserted. There were bars and industrial estates. The ancient route to Santiago is ensconced in the middle of modern life. It became a bit of a joke that we could look at nature, ancient woods and incredible flora and fauna on one side and a motorway on the other. It was beautiful and ugly simultaneously. For a few days, I moaned about it. You know, I was going, I walked in much more beautiful places. But then I began to realise that actually that kind of, the fact that it was ensconced in real life was the point. And the bigger point we discovered was just to keep going. On the second day, we walked from the Portuguese coast all the way up the estuary of the mighty River Minho, which is a huge estuary which marks the border between Spain and Portugal. That day it was a 24-kilometre walk up a long red road. That red road now, I think, haunts all of our dreams. It was regularly referenced as a low point in the walk. For my group, with 6 kilometres of the red road to go, we'd all absolutely had it. Luckily, we found a bar. Some of us had Vinho Verde. Some had a beer. I had an orange Fanta and lots of paracetamol. And we kept going, cracking jokes, having an adventure wee. There was no one around to see. And in mild hysterics from sugar and exhaustion, we rechristened the river Minho rather than Minho because it was getting flashed at so many times. I blame the Queenager bladder. We laughed about that so much, but maybe you just had to be there. I learned there was no point checking steps. I mean, lots of people had stepometers and things, and we were doing over 30,000 steps a day. But there was no point in asking how far we'd come or how much further there was to go. The Camino forces you into an endless present. This step, and then the next step, until it ends. There's no point in asking how many more. And knowing how much more there is to go won't change anything. There's no negotiation to be had. The only way is onward. And in that certainty of just keeping walking until the end comes, there is a huge sense of freedom, time to think, to talk, to explore, to confide, or maybe realise something we hadn't seen before. We cried as we remembered those we'd lost as we walked along. We laughed at the hilarity and joy of being alive in such beautiful nature, or even next to a factory. We rallied around each other, swooping in to support when it all got too much, which it did at some point for all of us. And through that endless sense of just putting one foot in front of another for a week, we bonded and freed ourselves and formed such wonderful and intense new friendships. It wasn't all hardship. This was a Queenager trip. So every night we stayed in really fantastic places. Some of those incredible Spanish paradors, one in Tui next to the cathedral, one in Ponte Vecchio on the kind of Spanish-Portuguese border. Stunning ancient stone buildings stuffed with history. In Santiago, we stayed in a San Franciscan monastery right next to the Basilica of St. Francis. So we weren't slumming it. We had hot baths and fantastic food, bacalao, fresh, huge prawns straight out of the Atlantic. The food in Galicia is incredible. Lots of almond cake, which is a Camino special. Hearty bowls of lentil and chorizo soup on the trail. Some days we just had sandwiches that we'd taken from breakfast and we sat on the rocks looking out to sea, chugging down water thirstily. It's really hard to drink enough. And the Atlantic coast really is truly awesome. The mighty rollers crashing onto rocks or breaking far out invoke fear and a sense of the smallness of ourselves, how each one of us is a wave breaking in time. Or at the end, I went into the cathedral and lit a candle for some of the people I know who've died, and you just get that sense that you're that candle burning for quite a small amount of time. There were so many jokes. Lots of one lady was dubbed E numbers Ema because she had a huge bag of Skittles and kind of refreshers and things with E numbers in to keep us going. On the way to Padron, the place like the Peppers, we were getting really tired and we were hallucinating about travelators and taxis and all those kind of things. But we did make it to the finish. In fact, some of the locals are quite naughty. They put adverts for taxis on the lampposts towards the end of the journey when you're walking into town. But we didn't crack. For some, though, the taxi was the route of self-compassion. One of our ladies, who really drives herself very hard, had arrived with a foot injury. She nobly limped 23 kilometres on the first day. But on the second day, I was delighted when she got into a cab to the hotel at lunchtime and said she was going back for a rest. For those of us who drive ourselves very hard, sometimes knowing when to throw in the towel is also self-care and wisdom. The Camino is about pushing our own boundaries, and for everyone, that will be different. For some, that's actually admitting that it would serve us best to rest and recuperate and live to fight another day. For others, it's realising that we can keep going, even if it's uncomfortable, and that some discomfort won't hurt us, that we can endure and break through. And on day 3, some of the women who were injured took a break and visited a winery instead to kind of unwind. We really take the view that to each their own. There's no one way to do this. For me, though, there was a bigger insight. By walking so far in our 50s, 60s and 70s as Queenagers, we challenge assumptions about what midlife women can do, what we're for, what we're capable of. It makes us pathfinders and role models for the women who come after us. There were so many younger ones who looked at us as going, it's amazing that you're all doing it. I was amazed at how much my 50 or 5-year-old body could endure. I loved the physicalness of the challenge, despite my bad toe. And I've returned with muscles in bits of my legs and a level of fitness I never knew that I could actually achieve. And you can see a little bit of pink on the cheeks. And there was something about the challenge which fueled the soul. It made me really wonder what else I could do, what else I could dare to try. And that's a great thing to think of midlife. I think the Camino untethered us from the normal flow of life. It forced us to be in the moment with each other. The trail became a kind of liminal space in which it was possible to shed griefs and move forward. It allowed us to accept difficult truths. Everyone, you see, had crossed their own personal Rubicon. For some, it was just the act of sharing a room with a stranger, or rather a friend they hadn't made yet, and getting out of their comfort zone in that way. For others, it was just coming on a holiday with a whole load of strangers they'd never met before, or walking further than they ever had, or finding and getting support that people so needed from the wider group. Or maybe the space to talk about a partner who had died, or a marriage that wasn't working, or a difficult relationship with an adult child, an estrangement or a disappointment. Often in midlife, we face a rupture of what we once were, so profound that we don't really know who we are anymore. The Camino was an opportunity to admit that, and also to find a new way through, to maybe create a new kind of identity for ourselves. At the Noon Circle at the airport, we had a wonderful kind of summing up. I talked about how I'd had a terrible night in the hotel, awful dreams, waking up freezing cold. And I learned that the room I'd slept in had been part of a women's prison. The Catholic Church is complicated for women, all that Madonna and whore, not much in between. It's patriarchy written large on many of our bodies. I talked about the great sense of purpose I feel in honouring the trials of women past, and how it's important to try and construct a more positive sense of what women can be in the future. This feels particularly urgent to me in a world where some of our hard-won female rights seem to be going backwards. That was certainly something that was very on my mind in that Catholic cathedral. And I was left with a strong sense of purpose and mission, that there is still so much more to do to honour the sufferings of women who came before us, that we really are, as Queenagers, a pioneering generation of women, gifted so much that the women who came before us didn't have, that it's our duty to push forward on women's rights. There was a sense of that being a bit of a personal crusade to me, which was brought into focus because of the Camino. I discovered today that the left little toe is the part of the body which is the earth connection to the feminine. And that's certainly wounded all over the world. And more broadly, the just in my foot. And that also chimes with my thoughts about the shackling and oppressing of women for the past 2,000 years. But it also made me think about how I'm personally walking differently in the world in the last 5 years. More lightly, more consciously, more lovingly, trying to create and delineate a new Queenager possibility, a new path forward. And I think it's really important to try and heal the sufferings of our sex over so long, and do whatever we can in our own small way. What of everyone else? Well, when I was writing this email, it felt so mighty trying to sum up our week. I didn't really know where to begin. So I asked some of the ladies to share with me some of their reflections. Personally, the whole week has continued to expand in my mind since we came back. And it seemed that was the case for the others too. So their observations were so beautiful, I'm going to put some of them in here now. So one said, I've been having dreams about the Camino every night since we got home, processing all the places we went and the stories we told and heard. The sense of camaraderie and kindness will last a long time, and the knowledge that we're all capable of much more than we might believe with the right support behind us. I really loved that. That really chimed with how I felt too. I like this one too. I will remember the rhythm of the week, the camaraderie, again, the sense of togetherness. Every person I walked beside taught me something valuable. I will remember walking the Camino one step at a time and try to carry that sense of one foot after the other into the days ahead. I'm hoping that on days when I can't take steps, I'll trust that rest will help me restart. I appreciate nature so much more. I will remember the encouragement, the medication, the walking poles, we all use those, the stretches, the nuts and chocolate that kept us all going, and thank you. And the circle at the airport meant so much to me. Seeing everyone supported and held in that moment was so uplifting and special. Thank you for that. Another one said, I thought I was walking for the women in my life who are no longer here to do it for themselves. Instead, through the kindness and wisdom of women I'd never met, I realised I can finally put the weight of grief, sadness, guilt and responsibility down, that I don't have to keep pushing through, that I can be kind to myself and stop, that it's okay not to be okay sometimes, and to rest and give myself a break and not be afraid to ask for or accept support. That's so at the heart of what we do at Noon. Another one said, I didn't have expectations of what a pilgrimage would bring and thought I would have a week enjoying conversations and beautiful scenery. But for me, walking the Camino was so much more. The Camino path itself was less spectacular than I'd imagined from reviews in terms of beauty, but the shared experiences, the stories, the vulnerable conversations, the new friendships, the honest kindness and support were the real pilgrimage. That was unexpected, and lifelong memories were created. The gift of creating those memories for a newly formed group is something so special. Heartfelt thanks to you all for organising. I have to say that reading those comments made me feel a bit teary. Just rereading them now makes me feel a bit emotional. It was such a special time, such amazing women. It truly encapsulated everything we're trying to do at Noon, showing each other that we can do more than we thought.